The hum of the Starliner Horizon's reach echoed faintly in the empty corridors, carrying the faint tang of recycled air and electronics. Humanity had waited a long time for this moment. Decades of cautious exploration, cautious diplomacy, careful calculations, and now, standing on the precipice of the Galactic Federation, everything hung by a single thread. Supreme Commander Elias Kor watched the Federation's distant orbital citadel rotate in the viewport. Its structure was impossibly vast, the metallic latticework a testament to civilizations older than any human memory. He had seen war, the chaos of cities burning, the shattered remains of human ambition, and he knew the eyes watching him now would see only that history, not the present. The petition his delegation had sent months ago outlined humanity's progress, its lessons learned, its failures acknowledged, but he knew better than to expect leniency. The Federation did not forgive easily, and it had no patience for a species that mirrored its own violent past. He straightened his posture as the communications panel flickered to life, the visage of the adjudicator materializing, elongated features, pale eyes that held centuries of judgment, every line on their face a testament to survived catastrophe. Commander Kor, the alien's voice resonated softly but firmly. We have reviewed your submission. Your species' history is instructive. We understand your achievements. Yet history is a weight we cannot ignore. Tell us, why should humanity be entrusted with membership in a federation that nearly fell to a species like yours? Kor's jaw tightened. He could feel the weight of every battle he had fought, every decision made under fire, every human life lost or spared. He did not flinch. Because we have survived our past and learned, he said, his voice steady. And because we are not your past, we are human, and we intend to prove it. The adjudicator's eyes narrowed slightly, a subtle gesture heavy with millennia of experience. Your words are measured, Commander. Yet the Federation cannot grant membership lightly. Your species' history is stained with cycles of conflict, planetary devastation, and fractured governance. These are warnings written across time. Kor absorbed each word, the weight of countless lives pressing down. Around him, the human delegation shifted uneasily, aware that centuries of achievement were being measured against past mistakes. We are aware of our past, Kor said, deliberate, and we have chosen to act differently. Every system we've colonized, every treaty honored, every decision to protect life rather than exploit it, proves humanity has changed. The alien's expression remained unreadable. Change is insufficient. The Federation is responsible for the stability of countless civilizations. You must demonstrate that humanity's growth is not transient, that it can withstand our tests. Kor's fingers tightened on the console edge. The trial was coming. The Federation would not allow proving on paper alone. Then we accept your trial, he said. Not as a petition for mercy, but as a proving ground. We will show who we are, not who we once were. Silence followed, broken by the hum of the horizon's reach and the distant citadel glinting in orbit. The adjudicator inclined their head, acknowledgement or warning. Very well, Commander Kor. The stability trial will begin. Humanity will be judged solely on choices, strategy, and endurance. Kor met the alien's gaze evenly. The galaxy pressed down, yet he felt resolve ignite. Humanity had been underestimated. He would ensure they would not remain so. Kor stepped back from the viewport, letting the hum of the horizon's reach fill the silence. The alien adjudicator observed him carefully, each subtle movement noted, each breath measured. Elias had seen scrutiny like this before in human courts and military tribunals, but nothing compared to the weight of a species-wide judgment. He could feel it pressing against the edge of his mind, testing his patience, calculating the smallest slip that might condemn humanity. Commander, the adjudicator said softly, voice even, we will observe you closely. Your decisions, your tactics, your restraint, or lack thereof, will determine the Federation's response. We do not intervene, but we record everything. Everything. Kor nodded once, steady, absorbing the full measure of the threat. He knew what they feared most, that humanity could be violent, adaptable, unpredictable. They did not yet understand the depth of his species' resilience. The way loss sharpened resolve rather than diminishing it. or how humanity could innovate under conditions that would immobilize even the most advanced alien planners. For a moment, he considered smiling, but it would be misread. He had learned that expressions could betray intent. "We understand the observation," he said. "You will see a species capable of both violence and compassion, rule-breaking and loyalty, destruction and protection. You will see what humans truly are." The adjudicator's eyes flickered, almost imperceptibly, as if a memory had stirred. Elias noted it without comment. He could not show satisfaction. Humanity's trial was beginning, and every move would be scrutinized. Yet beneath the pressure, a quiet certainty settled in him. They had been underestimated. They would be judged unfairly, but they would endure. They always did. The Horizon's Reach drifted in orbit around the Federation citadel, its lights reflecting faintly on the polished metal deck. Kor moved among his delegation, watching as advisors whispered quietly, checking notes, revising simulations. Every one of them understood the unspoken reality. The trial was designed to fail humanity. Every metric, every parameter, every objective test had been calculated to measure weakness, and their strengths, adaptability, improvisation, resilience, were counted as hazards, as evidence of volatility. Kor allowed himself a moment to consider it. Humanity was a species forged in chaos, tempered by repeated cycles of disaster and renewal. They had survived wars that had shredded continents, rebellions that had fractured governments, pandemics that had emptied cities. They could endure. They could innovate. They could strike decisively, and yet choose restraint when it mattered. Those were traits the Federation feared most. He imagined the adjudicator observing, meticulously recording, expecting patterns, expecting obedience. They would not see it. The humans would defy expectation at every turn, not recklessly, but with intent. Kor paused by the viewport, staring at the swirling light of distant stars. Somewhere in the void waited the first phase. War games against simulations and Federation proxies. Every choice would be scrutinized, every ethical decision scored. And yet, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The trial could attempt to define them, but it could not predict the heart of humanity. It was the first step of many, a crucible that would test endurance, strategy, and morality. And when it began, the Federation would discover the truth they had long feared. Humans were unpredictable, capable of both violence and mercy, and they would not be constrained by the rules others imposed. The first exercise began before dawn, with the Horizon's Reach hovering above a simulated battlefield projected across the orbital deck. Holographic terrain stretched in all directions, cities, forests, rivers, designed to mimic populated systems under threat. Commander Elias Kor stood at the center of the control room, scanning the array of indicators and feeds. The Federation had crafted this scenario with precision, every decision a potential failure, every human choice monitored for ethical compromise or tactical deviation. The first targets appeared, simulated enemy units advancing toward civilian populations. Kor's mind raced through options, balancing speed, efficiency, and preservation. Standard protocol would demand prioritization, destroy the threat, accept civilian losses. But Kor's instincts, honed in human conflicts, demanded a different path. Orders issued to his officers were careful, precise, yet deliberately unconventional. Evacuate civilians, adapt strike patterns, counterattack only when safe. The Federation adjudicators recorded every moment silently, their eyes calculating, expecting chaos. And chaos arrived, just not in the way they anticipated. Humans moved fluidly, improvising routes, coordinating decentralized teams, using the environment to their advantage. Civilians were saved where simulations had predicted none would survive. And yet, the humans struck with decisive violence when the threat advanced beyond control, halting simulated destruction with a single, coordinated strike. The adjudicators exchanged subtle glances, the slightest twitch betraying the concern they could not speak aloud. Humanity's combination of violence, adaptation, and compassion was unfolding exactly as they feared, and yet still within a framework of strategy and purpose. The simulated enemy pressed closer, advancing through the holographic city with relentless efficiency. Federation metrics lit red, signaling predicted civilian casualties. Kor's officers looked to him for guidance. Evacuate civilians first, He ordered, voice steady but firm. Engage only when no one else can be saved. The room stilled. No one hesitated, but the tension was palpable. Every evacuation route, every defensive maneuver was a gamble. Federation observers were already marking points off, noting that deviation from prescribed combat methods was instability. Yet humanity moved as it always had in crisis, coordinated chaos. Teams adapted instantly when routes collapsed, improvised bridges and safe zones on the fly, and diverted resources toward protecting non-combatants. When enemy forces reached critical positions, humans struck with controlled violence, neutralizing threats swiftly and decisively. The adjudicator's expression remained unreadable, but the pale eyes flickered, micro-gestures betraying concern. Their methods are unexpected, the adjudicator murmured, though the voice carried no judgment aloud. Core noted it without comment, focusing instead on the feeds. Every action was deliberate, every strike measured, every human life valued. Yet in the Federation's scoring system, saving civilians counted as a failure, delaying mission objectives counted as defiance, and demonstrating ingenuity counted as unpredictability. Humanity was succeeding and failing at the same time, and the paradox weighed heavily on the alien observers. Core allowed himself a brief thought. The trial could try to define them, but it could not contain the essence of a species forged by centuries of survival, loss, and relentless adaptation. The cityscape of the holographic simulation burned in faint projection light as enemy forces regrouped, moving faster than predicted. Federation metrics continued to flash warnings, points deducted for every deviation from standard tactics. Core observed the feeds calmly, knowing exactly what the adjudicators expected: panic, rigid obedience, failure. Instead, humanity adapted. Teams split spontaneously, covering vulnerable zones, creating unexpected defensive choke points, and using environmental features to funnel simulated enemies into non-lethal traps. Civilians were guided to safety, and yet when a critical threat appeared near a bridge, human units struck with unflinching violence, collapsing the structure and neutralizing the advance. The adjudicator's gaze lingered on the displays, pale eyes unblinking but tense. "They are unpredictable," the voice admitted softly, though no outward sign of panic was allowed. Core noted their subtle reaction without comment, issuing rapid commands with precise timing. Each action balanced survival, ethics, and strategy. To the Federation, the paradox was intolerable. Humans were both adaptive and rule-breaking, violent and merciful, chaotic yet coordinated. Every success under their system was simultaneously a failure by the trial's rigid criteria. Yet for Core, the moment was instructive. Humanity had always thrived under conditions that would collapse lesser species. The trial was meant to expose weakness. Instead, it revealed resilience, judgment, and ingenuity forged through centuries of conflict and loss. And somewhere in the silent observation of the adjudicator, Core sensed the first stirrings of doubt. Humanity was showing exactly what the Federation feared most, and it was only the beginning. The simulation shifted abruptly, introducing a new sector, a densely populated district under siege. Metrics flashed warnings of catastrophic civilian casualties if human units failed to act quickly. Core's jaw tightened. Standard Federation procedure would demand prioritizing neutralization of enemy forces above all else. But humanity had never operated on rigid morality alone. "Evacuate civilians first," Core ordered, voice firm, echoing across the command deck. Officers split into decentralized teams, improvising escape corridors, coordinating through ad hoc signals, and guiding the holographic population to safety. Every action carried risk, every maneuver tested limits. When enemy units breached a central square, humans struck with controlled, decisive violence, halting the advance before more lives were lost. The adjudicator's eyes flickered, almost imperceptibly. Their scoring system penalized hesitation, compassion, deviation from protocol, and even ingenuity. Humanity was excelling, yet failing by every Federation metric. Core felt the tension, not just from the trial, but from the pressure to balance survival and morality. Civilians were safe. Enemies were stopped. Yet the Federation's artificial construction deemed it insufficient. He allowed himself a fleeting thought. The trial's design was not about measuring skill. It was about proving preconceptions. Humanity would endure, innovate, and adapt, just as it always had. And somewhere behind the pale, unblinking gaze of the adjudicator, a subtle unease began to surface. Humanity's methods defied expectation. Their unpredictability, combined with deliberate restraint and controlled violence, was exactly what the Federation feared, and exactly what would define the trial going forward. The simulation intensified, introducing simultaneous threats across multiple districts. Enemy units moved unpredictably, civilians scattered, and environmental hazards appeared without warning. Federation metrics flashed furiously, points deducted for every deviation from standard engagement protocols. Corps' officers consulted him, hesitation in their eyes. "Focus on civilian protection first," he commanded. "Neutralize only when unavoidable." Teams split again, improvising routes, coordinating across sectors with decentralized communication, anticipating enemy movement as if reading their minds. Civilians were guided to safety, traps were set to halt enemy advances, and lethal strikes were applied only when all alternatives failed. Every human action was recorded, every success flagged as a violation. The adjudicator's expression remained unreadable, but subtle tension radiated from the pale eyes, the faintest shift betraying their concern. Humanity's adaptability, combined with their willingness to apply violence strategically while preserving life, created a paradox the Federation had not accounted for. Corps noted the disparity between performance and judgment. To the Federation, these actions were instability, a failure to comply. To him, it was survival, ingenuity, and morality in perfect balance. He allowed himself a thought he would not voice. The trial could attempt to define humanity, but it could not contain it. The humans under his command were unpredictable, capable of calculated violence and profound compassion simultaneously. And with each passing simulation tick, the adjudicator's unease grew, even as they silently recorded the data. Humanity was proving exactly what the Federation feared most. The holographic city now appeared in chaos. Fire spread across sectors, civilians trapped in collapsing structures, and enemy units advancing with relentless precision. Federation metrics blazed red, signaling predicted failures on every front. Corps' fingers tightened on the console edge. "We have one chance to minimize casualties," he said, voice low but unwavering. Officers moved like extensions of his mind, improvising bridges, rerouting evacuees, and intercepting threats. Each human unit displayed a blend of calculated violence and deliberate restraint, striking decisively when no other option existed, yet halting before collateral harm could escalate. The adjudicator watched silently, pale eyes narrowing with subtle unease. Every choice they made defied expectation. Saving civilians delayed offensive objectives, deviation from protocol triggered deductions, and their ingenuity flagged them as unpredictable. But the humans continued, unshaken. Corps observed patterns emerging in enemy movements and adjusted rapidly, applying tactics the Federation's algorithms could not anticipate. One by one, his officers executed synchronized maneuvers that neutralized the most dangerous threats without compromising civilian safety. Points against humanity piled higher, yet their performance demonstrated efficiency, adaptability, and moral clarity simultaneously. Corps felt the familiar spark of resolve ignite. Humanity was not following the trial, they were redefining it. And behind the adjudicator's composed expression, he sensed the first seeds of doubt. The Federation had expected compliance, predictability, obedience. They had underestimated a species capable of controlled violence, compassion, and improvisation in a single heartbeat. The horizons reached detached from the simulation grid, and a new scenario began. Proxy forces representing a Federation-aligned species materialized across multiple sectors. Corps' eyes scanned the feeds, noting civilian populations embedded within enemy ranks. Standard protocol demanded neutralization at all costs, yet humanity's instinct for preservation remained unshaken. No unnecessary casualties, Corps instructed. Neutralize only when evacuation isn't possible. His officers split, improvising evacuation corridors, coordinating decentralized strikes, and creating diversions to funnel enemy units away from civilians. Federation metrics responded immediately. Every deviation counted as failure. Killing too slowly or prioritizing protection flagged instability. Acting decisively when necessary flagged excessive aggression. The paradox was clear. Humanity was succeeding and failing simultaneously. Core moved among the command stations, issuing rapid commands, reading patterns in enemy behavior that simulations had failed to anticipate. The adjudicator's gaze lingered on the feeds, pale eyes betraying concern. Humanity's combination of controlled violence, improvisation, and moral decision-making was unpredictable, and the paradox challenged the Federation's assumptions. Civilians were being saved. Enemy units were neutralized. Yet the Federation would mark it all as failure, as instability, as evidence that humans could not be trusted. Core allowed himself a brief reflection. The trial was never about measuring strength. It was about proving a bias. Humanity was showing exactly what the adjudicators feared most: adaptability, calculated violence, compassion, and the uncontainable spark of unpredictability. And for the first time, he felt the faintest sense of vindication. The proxy battlefield erupted into chaotic motion. Enemy units maneuvered unpredictably, civilians scattered in every direction, and environmental hazards shifted without warning. Federation scoring systems blinked red as every human deviation triggered deductions. Core remained calm, scanning feeds and anticipating movements his officers could not yet see. Redirect squads to Sector 5, he ordered. Create a safe corridor and neutralize threats only if civilians are at risk. The teams moved instantly, improvising bridges, constructing temporary barricades, and coordinating attacks that the Federation simulations had deemed impossible. Civilians were guided to safety, enemy forces contained, and yet humanity was still flagged for instability. The adjudicator's eyes lingered on the data streams, eyes narrowing in concern. Humanity's unpredictability, combined with controlled violence and moral precision, was eroding confidence in the scoring system itself. Every action that saved lives counted as defiance. Every calculated strike counted as aggression. Yet Core felt the familiar spark of certainty. Humans had always thrived under conditions designed to constrain them. The trial sought to measure conformity and obedience. Humanity was redefining success through innovation, judgment, and empathy. Somewhere behind the adjudicator's composed exterior, doubt began to take root. Humanity was proving what the Federation feared most: a species capable of violence, rule-breaking, and compassion all at once, and they would not be confined by the narrow expectations of others. The cityscape twisted into new complexity. Refugee populations now crowded critical junctions, and enemy forces advanced relentlessly toward strategic points. Federation metrics flashed warnings at every human maneuver. Evacuating civilians delayed offensive objectives. Improvisation flagged deviation, and any hesitation, even for moral reasoning, was scored as failure. Core's jaw tightened. Humanity's instinct was clear: protect the innocent. Prioritize evacuation, he commanded, voice steady. Neutralize only when no alternative remains. Officers split into rapid response teams, improvising escape routes, rerouting civilians, and diverting enemy units into controlled traps. Every move was deliberate, balancing violence and mercy. Federation scoring penalized them anyway. Every rescue was logged as defiance. Every creative tactic counted against stability. Core watched the feeds, noting subtle patterns in enemy behavior the simulations had failed to predict. Civilians were saved, threats neutralized, and yet humanity's performance appeared chaotic to the Federation. The adjudicator's pale eyes lingered on the data, unblinking but betraying a flicker of unease. Humanity's combination of adaptability, controlled violence, and moral judgment was rewriting the rules of the trial in real time. Core allowed himself a thought he could not voice. The trial was never about measuring skill. It was about proving bias. Humanity was succeeding by surviving, innovating, and acting with compassion. And in the quiet moments between commands, he sensed the faintest tremor of doubt in the adjudicator. The Federation had expected obedience. They had expected predictability. What they were witnessing instead was the essence of human resilience, and it was impossible to categorize, contain, or predict. The final phase of the simulation unfolded with relentless intensity. Fires erupted across multiple districts, enemy units converged from all directions, and civilians were trapped in collapsing sectors. Federation metrics blared, signaling predicted catastrophic losses. Corps' hands moved quickly over the console, issuing orders with precision. Divide teams. Evacuate civilians. Contain threats. Strike only when unavoidable. Officers executed flawlessly, improvising paths, using environmental obstacles, and applying lethal force only where necessary. Each decision balanced efficiency, morality, and survival. The adjudicator's eyes flickered, a subtle twitch betraying concern. Humanity's actions defied expectation, decisive in combat, yet restrained when destruction could be avoided. Every success in the simulation was simultaneously a violation of the trial's rigid rules. Every civilian saved, every improvised maneuver, was scored as failure. Corps felt the familiar weight of responsibility, yet beneath it a quiet certainty. Humans had always thrived under impossible conditions. The paradox unsettled the Federation. Their scoring algorithms could not account for calculated violence tempered by empathy. Humanity was unpredictable, innovative, violent, and merciful all at once. And somewhere behind the pale, unblinking gaze of the adjudicator, doubt began to seed itself. The trial was meant to confirm weakness. Instead, it had revealed resilience, judgment, and a moral clarity that no rigid system could suppress. Humanity would endure. They would adapt. And when the Federation declared judgment, it would be a lesson in what they had failed to anticipate, that unpredictability, guided by conscience, could be humanity's greatest strength. The simulation shifted again, this time projecting Federation-aligned forces across multiple sectors. Unlike the controlled grids before, these units mimicked intelligent opponents with civilian populations embedded within their ranks. Corps scanned the feeds, noting the complexity. A single misstep could cause mass casualties and trigger catastrophic scoring. No unnecessary casualties, he instructed. Protect civilians. Neutralize only when unavoidable. Officers moved instantly, improvising escape routes, rerouting civilians, and containing enemy units without escalating destruction. Federation metrics reacted violently, marking every deviation as instability, every hesitation as failure. The paradox was unavoidable. Humanity's moral clarity, saving lives, improvising, adapting, was judged as weakness. Corps noted subtle signs of unease in the adjudicator's pale eyes, the slightest tightening around the lids, a flicker of tension. Humanity's combination of calculated violence, adaptive strategy, and empathy created a pattern the Federation could not reconcile. Civilians survived, enemies were contained, and yet humanity's actions were logged as failure. Corps allowed himself a brief thought. The trial was never meant to measure skill. It was meant to confirm preconceptions. Humanity's unpredictability, their ability to balance violence with mercy, rule-breaking with precision, was rewriting expectations. And in the quiet observation of the adjudicator, he sensed a first stir of doubt. Humanity was proving what the Federation had long feared. They could not be easily categorized, controlled, or predicted, and that very unpredictability would define the next phase of the trial. The simulation exploded into simultaneous crises. Enemy forces advanced across multiple districts, civilians trapped in shifting hazards, and environmental obstacles appeared without warning. Federation metrics blinked furiously, every human decision flagged as instability. Corps remained calm, scanning feeds and predicting enemy maneuvers. Divide teams. Evacuate civilians. Contain threats. Strike decisively only when necessary, he commanded. Officers executed flawlessly, improvising bridges, creating safe zones, and applying lethal force with precision. Civilians were saved. Enemy units were neutralized, yet the Federation recorded it all as failure. Every deviation from protocol, every act of ingenuity, every life preserved beyond calculated thresholds was scored as instability. The adjudicator's gaze lingered on the displays, pale eyes narrowing subtly. Humanity's adaptability and moral judgment defied the rigid metrics of the trial. Corps observed patterns in enemy behavior, adjusting tactics instantly, combining violence and restraint with a fluidity the Federation could not anticipate. Every success under the trial system counted as failure. Every failure counted as success in human terms. The paradox unsettled the observers. Humanity was unpredictable, capable of violence tempered by empathy, creative beyond algorithmic prediction, and resilient under unrelenting pressure. Core allowed a brief reflection. The trial sought to define humanity, but it could not contain it. Civilians lived, enemies were subdued, and the adjudicator's composure was quietly eroding. Humanity was proving exactly what the Federation feared. They were not just capable of survival, they were capable of shaping the rules themselves. The battlefield shifted again. Refugees crowded a central junction while enemy forces advanced relentlessly. Federation metrics flared red. Every human maneuver flagged. Standard protocol demanded immediate neutralization of the threat, yet Core hesitated only briefly, weighing the lives at risk. Evacuate civilians first, he ordered, voice firm. Officers split into rapid response teams, improvising escape corridors, rerouting the crowd, and containing enemy units with minimal destruction. Every decision balanced morality, survival, and strategic effectiveness. Federation scoring, however, counted each delay as failure, each deviation from prescribed tactics as instability, and even ingenuity flagged unpredictability. Core observed subtle flickers of concern in the adjudicator's pale eyes, knowing they registered every moment, yet were constrained by centuries of procedure. Civilians were guided to safety, enemy units neutralized, and still humanity's performance appeared chaotic on the Federation's metrics. The trial was designed to confirm bias, to test obedience under moral conflict. Yet humanity, forged by centuries of survival, loss, and adaptation, endured. Their actions demonstrated a paradox the Federation could not reconcile. Decisive violence executed with restraint, moral judgment balanced with tactical necessity, innovation applied under unrelenting scrutiny. And somewhere behind the adjudicator's composed exterior, doubt had taken root. Humanity was showing exactly what the Federation feared most: a species capable of unpredictability, compassion, and calculated violence, all simultaneously, and impossible to contain or predict. The city simulation had become a labyrinth of chaos. Fires raged, civilians huddled in collapsing structures, and enemy units struck from multiple directions. Federation metrics exploded in red warnings, signaling catastrophic failure on every front. Core's gaze scanned the feeds, his mind calculating, adapting, predicting movements the simulations had not anticipated. Split teams. Protect civilians. Contain enemy advances. Engage only when necessary, he instructed. Officers moved instantly, improvising escape routes, rerouting civilians, and coordinating defensive strikes with precise timing. The paradox grew. The more effectively humanity protected innocents and minimized destruction, the more the scoring system flagged them for instability. Every deviation from protocol, every unconventional tactic, registered as failure, even when results were undeniably successful. Core's fingers danced over the controls, redirecting squads in real time, balancing aggression and mercy. The adjudicator watched in quiet tension, pale eyes flicking between the data streams, noting patterns that no algorithm could anticipate. The human's combination of improvisation, moral judgment, and tactical efficiency was reshaping the simulated battlefield in ways the Federation had not designed for. Success and failure blurred. Obedience and ingenuity collided. Core allowed himself a brief thought. The trial might measure adherence to rules, but it could not define the essence of his people. They could be unpredictable, violent when necessary, and compassionate even under relentless scrutiny, a combination that no scoring system could fully capture. The simulated battlefield had reached peak intensity. Fires licked the edges of crumbling structures, civilians moved in panicked waves, and enemy formations advanced with brutal efficiency. Federation metrics continued to flash warnings, flagging every unconventional maneuver as instability, every delay for evacuation as failure. Core stood at the command console, calm in the storm. Prioritize life. Contain threats. Strike only when all else fails, he said, issuing orders with precision. Officers executed with flawless coordination, improvising escape corridors, creating barricades, and applying controlled force where unavoidable. Civilians were moved to safety. Enemy units were neutralized. The paradox was undeniable. The humans' effectiveness in saving lives and controlling the battlefield violated the rigid rules of the trial, yet it achieved the very goals the simulation was designed to test. The adjudicator observed silently, eyes tracing every movement, recording every choice, yet subtle tension betrayed unease. Patterns emerged that algorithms could not predict, teams adapting in real time, combining lethal precision with moral restraint, turning chaos into order without following prescribed paths. Core allowed himself a brief thought. The trial had been constructed to highlight weakness, but the human's resilience, judgment, and improvisation turned it into proof of something greater. The Federation might penalize them according to their metrics, but the reality of human capability, their ability to blend strategy, empathy, and decisive action, could not be denied. The simulation grids dimmed, the fires and chaos fading into the quiet hum of the horizon's reach. Scores blinked on the adjudicator's panels, red metrics piling high, yet the human officers stood unwavering, composed, eyes sharp and minds alert. Core exhaled slowly, scanning his team, seeing exhaustion mingled with resolve. The trial had pushed them to the edge, impossible ethical dilemmas, relentless threats, and a scoring system designed to punish the very traits that defined them. Yet they had adapted, improvised, and protected life while neutralizing danger. The adjudicator remained motionless, pale eyes fixed on the results, recording each outcome meticulously. There was a silence heavier than any alarm. Metrics said failure. Rigidity insisted humanity was unstable. Reality said something else entirely. Core's mind traced every decision made under fire. Moments of violent precision, the controlled chaos of evacuation, the balance of aggression and mercy. Humanity had demonstrated a principle the Federation rarely allowed itself to see clearly. A species could combine unpredictability, ingenuity, and moral judgment, surviving conditions that would crush others. Core's gaze met the adjudicators briefly. No words were exchanged, yet understanding passed in the pause. Humanity had endured the trial, not by following rules, but by shaping their own path. The Federation would record this as failure, yet the truth was undeniable. The humans had outmaneuvered expectation, surviving and protecting life in ways no algorithm could quantify. The next stage would begin soon, and the lessons of this phase would echo into the challenges yet to come. The horizon's reach drifted silently above the Federation citadel, the echoes of the trial still resonating in every control room and observation deck. Scores had been submitted, metrics tallied, and every human decision logged. The Federation would debate the results, yet Core knew the truth. The trial had revealed what no algorithm could measure. Humans had balanced violence, ingenuity, and morality under impossible conditions, reshaping the parameters of the simulation itself. Behind the calm exterior of the adjudicator, pale eyes flickered with uncertainty, a subtle acknowledgement that prediction had failed. And then the unexpected appeared. Sensors aboard the Horizon's Reach detected anomalies beyond the simulation. Ripples in subspace, unfamiliar energy signatures, movement unaccounted for in any charts. Core's stomach tightened. The trial, designed to define humanity, had coincided with the first signs of a far greater danger. Preliminary scans suggested a species, or force, approaching with speed, intent, and power beyond known Federation capabilities. Core turned to his officers. Prepare for immediate analysis and response. Civilian and planetary protection comes first. His voice carried the same calm determination that had guided humanity through centuries of conflict. The Federation Council would soon receive reports, but Core already understood the implications. Humanity's unpredictable combination of violence, empathy, and adaptability would be tested not against simulations or scoring metrics, but against a threat the galaxy had never faced. And for the first time, he sensed a possibility that the humans' reputation as chaotic and dangerous might become their greatest advantage. Scanners aboard the Horizon's Reach flickered violently as the anomalies resolved into distinct vessels or entities, moving at speeds beyond conventional propulsion. Energy readings pulsed with a rhythm that defied known physics, and preliminary scans suggested biological and technological components intertwined in ways unfamiliar to human or Federation science. Kor's jaw tightened. This was no simulation. This was real. The humans under his command readied defensive protocols, boarding teams, and evacuation contingencies, but he knew it would not be enough to rely solely on firepower. The Federation Council convened urgently, transmitting orders and protocols to intercept and contain. Kor understood their fear. The unknown was always amplified when humans were involved, their unpredictability regarded as threat rather than advantage. Yet he saw a different path. We assess, contain, and protect, he instructed. Do not engage recklessly. Every action must preserve life where possible. Officers exchanged glances, then executed with practiced precision, improvising maneuvers, scanning for vulnerabilities, and prioritizing evacuation over destruction. The anomaly's approach accelerated, revealing hints of intelligence, deliberate movement, coordinated strikes, and adaptive response patterns. The Federation scrambled its fleet, rigid in formation, unwilling to adjust tactics in real time. Humans moved differently, adaptable, agile, and willing to break convention to save lives. Kor's mind raced with possibilities. The trial had been preparation in disguise. Every decision tested previously, balancing violence and compassion, improvisation and precision, was now being applied against a threat beyond calculation. Humanity's unpredictability was no longer a liability. It could be the key to survival. The Federation fleet converged, rigid formations cutting through space toward the anomalies. Kor observed from the horizon's reach, noting their hesitancy, the predictability of their tactics, and their reliance on rigid protocols. He understood their fear. Unknown forces combined with humans' unpredictability was intolerable. Yet compromise was essential. We coordinate with the fleet, but we move independently where necessary, Kor instructed. Contain the threat, protect civilians, and preserve strategic assets. Officers confirmed, deploying teams with adaptive instructions, improvising as they had through every trial phase. The anomalies shifted patterns in response to the Federation's rigid formations, exploiting gaps and threatening collateral damage. Human units responded instantly, improvising defensive perimeters, redirecting evacuation routes, and using precise force where unavoidable. The Federation attempted to mirror these tactics, but delay and rigidity hindered them. Kor realized that survival depended on shared understanding. Trust our methods, he relayed to the Council. We've faced impossible scenarios. Follow our lead where your systems cannot adapt. Reluctantly, the adjudicator authorized partial autonomy. Humans became the pivot, blending rapid response, controlled aggression, and moral judgment. The anomalies reacted, testing every decision, pushing humans and Federation alike to the limit. And in this crucible, a new dynamic emerged. Cooperation born not of comfort, but necessity. Kor's eyes narrowed, assessing the fleet, the anomalies, and his officers. The trial had ended, but the real test had begun. Humanity's combination of violence, empathy, and improvisation was no longer a theoretical measure. It was the force that could shape the galaxy's survival. Sensors flared as the anomalies converged on a contested sector. Federation commanders hesitated, calculating conventional responses, but Kor moved decisively. Deploy intercept teams. Establish variable perimeters and anticipate adaptive behavior, he ordered. Officers executed immediately, improvising defensive formations and creating layered evacuation corridors for civilian systems. The anomalies responded, shifting in patterns no algorithm could predict, probing for weaknesses, testing every human and Federation maneuver. Kor's mind raced. Every decision balanced aggression and restraint, improvisation and moral judgment. The humans struck first with controlled precision, exploiting environmental features, funneling anomalies into neutralization zones while minimizing collateral damage. Federation units attempted to follow, but rigid protocols slowed them, leaving humans to adapt and adjust in real time. The anomalies recoiled, forcing unpredictable retreat and regrouping in response to human ingenuity. Kor watched the data, noting the subtle shifts in behavior. The anomalies were learning, adapting, reacting. The adjudicator observed silently, pale eyes reflecting hesitation for the first time. Humanity's combination of calculated violence, rapid improvisation, and protection of life was rewriting the battle as it unfolded. The Federation had expected chaos, but what emerged was effective strategy tempered by morality, a demonstration that unpredictability could be a tactical advantage. For the first time, humans and Federation alike glimpsed a truth they had long resisted, that the traits feared and condemned during the trial were exactly what made humanity indispensable in the face of this new threat. The anomalies shifted again, probing defensive lines and testing human and Federation cohesion. Corps' officers moved swiftly, improvising countermeasures in real time. Deploy layered perimeters, integrate Federation units where possible, and prioritize civilian protection, he ordered. Teams split across multiple sectors, creating adaptive choke points, diverting anomalies into containment zones while minimizing harm. Federation ships struggled to match the fluidity of the humans, but under Corps' guidance, they adjusted, mirroring improvisation rather than rigid formations. The anomalies responded unpredictably, and yet humanity's approach allowed for both decisive strikes and careful restraint. Civilians were evacuated, critical assets preserved, and enemy formations disrupted with efficiency that no simulation had predicted. The adjudicator's pale eyes narrowed, subtle unease betraying the silent acknowledgement that humans were reshaping the battlefield, not merely reacting to it. Corps felt the familiar spark of determination. Humanity's unpredictability, once condemned as dangerous, had become a strategic advantage, and the Federation's rigidity could now be guided by human intuition. As anomalies began to falter, their advance disrupted by adaptive tactics, the first coordinated victory emerged. Humanity and Federation forces, despite their differences, had found a rhythm. Improvisation complemented structure, and compassion guided necessary violence. Corps allowed a brief thought to pass. This was the true test, one the trial could never measure. Survival depended not on obedience, metrics, or fear, but on the unpredictable combination of morality, ingenuity, and controlled force that defined humans. The anomalies faltered for the first time. Their patterns, once unpredictable and relentless, began to reveal subtle vulnerabilities. Corps studied the data feeds intently. Focus on adaptive suppression, target weak points, redirect attacks, and protect civilians at all costs, he ordered. Officers split into rapid response teams, improvising traps and evacuation corridors while coordinating precise strikes. Federation units followed hesitantly, constrained by protocol, but human ingenuity set the pace, guiding the fleet's movements. The anomalies reacted to each maneuver, recalibrating in real time, yet the humans anticipated shifts with fluid coordination. Civilians were moved safely, energy signatures contained, and enemy formations disrupted systematically. The adjudicator observed from the council panels, pale eyes narrowing with unmistakable tension. The humans' ability to combine controlled aggression, improvisation, and ethical judgment was bending the battle in their favor. Where rigid strategy failed, adaptability succeeded. Corps allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. Every lesson learned during the trial, balancing violence with restraint, rule-breaking with precision, moral clarity with decisive action, was now applied in a life-and-death context. The anomalies' advance was stalled, their coordinated strikes blunted. Humanity's unconventional methods, once condemned as chaotic and dangerous, had become the decisive advantage. For the first time, the Federation witnessed not just survival, but strategy guided by conscience, innovation, and adaptability, a combination they had long underestimated, yet one now crucial to the galaxy's defense. The anomalies shifted again, converging on multiple fronts, but this time patterns emerged that hinted at something more than aggression. Their formations avoided certain sectors, circumvented vulnerable civilian clusters, and retreated from areas of overwhelming firepower rather than engaging. Corps noticed these anomalies weren't targeting, they were evading. Focus on containment, not destruction, he ordered. Observe their behavior and protect civilian sectors. Officers executed instantly, improvising perimeters, directing evacuations, and striking only when threats were imminent. Federation units followed hesitantly, constrained by protocol, Yet human adaptability drove the tempo. Every human maneuver balanced decisive force with restraint, but Core sensed a subtle anomaly in the anomaly's movements, patterns that suggested fear, not hostility. Civilians were guided to safety. Enemy formations were redirected and contained without unnecessary destruction. The adjudicator studied the feeds, pale eyes narrowing, struggling to reconcile the human's effectiveness with the unpredictable behavior of the anomalies. Core allowed himself a rare thought. The anomalies might not be an invading force at all. Their evasive movements, the avoidance of direct confrontation, and the careful calculation of risk suggested intelligence motivated by survival, not conquest. The Federation might interpret the same actions as defiance or weakness, but humans were beginning to read the truth hidden in the patterns. Survival required more than aggression, it required understanding. And in that realization lay the first opportunity to turn chaos into strategy. The anomaly's evasive patterns became unmistakable. They moved with purpose, avoiding confrontation with human and Federation units, clustering defensively, and retreating from sectors of overwhelming firepower. Core studied the feeds, noting subtle intelligence in their maneuvers. Each retreat, each flanking adjustment suggested survival instincts, not aggression. They're not attacking, they're fleeing, he announced over the fleet comms. Officers quickly adjusted strategy, forming containment corridors and defensive perimeters to protect the anomalies while still maintaining tactical advantage. Federation commanders hesitated, struggling to reconcile centuries of doctrine with the realization that what they had feared as chaos was a survival-driven response. Sensors ahead detected a massive, faster-moving force pursuing the anomalies, confirming Core's assessment. A greater, unknown threat was driving their flight. The adjudicator observed from the orbital center, pale eyes narrowing, silent but tense. Metrics could not measure intuition, predictive judgment, or improvisational coordination, the very tools Core's team now relied on. Human forces adapted, balancing aggressive deterrence with protection, redirecting the pursuing threat while shielding the fleeing entities. Every maneuver showcased the strategic value of unpredictability. Humanity's improvisation, decisiveness, and tactical insight demonstrated that rigid protocol alone could not solve the problem. The anomalies were not enemies. They were being hunted, and only through collaboration, adaptability, and judgment could both humans and the Federation respond effectively to what was coming. Core's fleet shifted into a defensive screen around the fleeing anomalies, anticipating the approaching threat. Sensors revealed energy signatures unlike anything in the Federation database. Rapid, coordinated, and highly adaptive. Maintain protective perimeter. Intercept and delay the pursuers without engaging the anomalies directly, Core ordered. Human ships twisted through space with calculated unpredictability, improvising intercept vectors and creating dynamic barriers. Federation vessels followed, hesitant at first, constrained by rigid protocols, but gradually mirrored human improvisation under Core's guidance. The pursuing force struck repeatedly, probing weaknesses, testing both humans and Federation units. Every maneuver by Core's fleet combined restraint with deadly precision, diverting attacks while preserving the fleeing anomalies formation. The anomalies reacted instinctively, their movement guided by survival instinct, weaving through defensive corridors created by humans. The adjudicator observed from the orbital center, pale eyes tracing the feeds, tension rising as the humans demonstrated a capacity for adaptive strategy the Federation had long underestimated. Algorithms could not quantify judgment or improvisation, and yet the humans were bending the battlefield to their will. Core allowed himself a quiet thought. The trial had been preparation, the lessons in balancing violence, improvisation, and judgment now applied in a real, life-or-death scenario. Survival would require flexibility, not rigid adherence to doctrine, and humanity's unique approach was proving indispensable. The unknown force pressed harder, weaving through human and Federation formations, relentless in its pursuit of the anomalies. Energy volleys flared across the sector as Core's fleet adjusted dynamically, human crews improvising intercept corridors and redirecting attacks to shield the fleeing entities. The anomalies reacted instinctively, twisting and accelerating through protective layers, their movements precise, yet unpredictable. Federation officers monitored the engagement closely, relaying intermittent observations. Preliminary analysis indicates this force may belong to a species thought extinct. Aggression patterns and adaptive maneuvers are reminiscent of humans in their historical reputation for resilience and unpredictability. The anomalies are fleeing, not provoking, the attackers. Core absorbed the information, coordinating strikes that balanced lethal precision with restraint, exploiting small openings without endangering the fleeing group. After sustained observation under heavy fire, the Federation formally provided the name, the Vorakai. Recognition brought a mixture of awe and tension. These were the entities long feared for their destructive capability. Core's crews adapted immediately, improvising tactics to redirect the Vorakai's attacks while maintaining a protective envelope around the anomalies. The battle was chaotic and brutal, yet every human maneuver combined strategy, intuition, and ethical judgment. In the heat of combat, unpredictability became an asset, turning the relentless assault into an opportunity to test and expand the alliance with Federation forces. The Vorakai intensified their assault, striking with synchronized volleys that tested every human and Federation maneuver. Core's fleet adjusted continuously, creating adaptive barriers, interweaving human ships with Federation vessels to redirect the pursuing force. Every decision balanced controlled aggression with the imperative to shield the anomalies. Sensors revealed subtle patterns. The Vorakai avoided unnecessary risks, favoring direct pressure over reckless engagement, yet their strength and coordination were overwhelming. Federation officers transmitted tactical updates, exploit weaknesses in formation, maintain perimeter, and anticipate adaptive maneuvers. Humans' improvisational patterns are stabilizing the fleet's response. Core responded instantly, deploying rapid response teams into the Vorakai's projected paths, drawing their fire while leaving openings for countermeasures. Human crews twisted through space unpredictably, using environmental anomalies and velocity adjustments to create false targets, funneling the Vorakai into traps they could not anticipate. The anomalies moved instinctively, threading through the defensive screen with subtle guidance from Core's ships. The Federation, hesitant at first, began integrating their formations into the fluid human-led strategy, providing firepower while learning adaptive pacing. Each maneuver showcased the humans' unique combination of improvisation, moral judgment, and precise timing. Even as the Vorakai pressed relentlessly, Core recognized that the battle was shifting. Unpredictability was no longer a liability but a strategic tool, allowing humans and Federation forces to turn defense into controlled opportunity, slowly bending the Vorakai assault toward advantage. The Vorakai adapted to the shifting defenses with brutal speed, abandoning precision harassment for saturation fire. Entire sectors burned as they attempted to overwhelm the human-led formations through sheer force. Federation commanders protested the strain on their fleets, warning of unacceptable losses if the line held. Core ignored them, rerouting human ships into collapsing zones, reinforcing weak points before Federation vessels could be breached. "They're escalating because we're in the way," one officer reported. "They don't care about losses." Federation intelligence finally broke its silence, transmitting restricted archives across the shared channel. "The Vorakai doctrine is absolute eradication," the adjudicator said. "They pursue specific species to extinction, regardless of cost. The anomalies are one of them." The implication rippled through the fleet. This was not territorial war. It was annihilation. Core's response was immediate. He ordered full interdiction, committing human strike groups deeper into Vorakai kill zones to sever pursuit vectors entirely. Federation commanders recoiled at the risk. "That level of exposure violates every engagement protocol," they warned. Core's voice was steady. "Then rewrite them." Human ships surged forward, absorbing fire meant for the anomalies, breaking Vorakai formations through sheer audacity and refusal to disengage. Federation vessels followed, reluctantly at first, then with growing cohesion as the Vorakai advance slowed. The line held, but at a cost. Wounded ships drifted, power failures spread, and yet the anomalies continued to escape. For the first time, the Federation witnessed humanity choosing sacrifice over efficiency, rescue over extermination, and refusing to let fear dictate survival. The Vorakai shifted tactics abruptly, abandoning broad suppression fire in favor of concentrated kill vectors aimed beyond the human Federation line. Kor saw it immediately. "They're ignoring us," he said. "They're targeting what's ahead." Federation analysts cross-referenced historical records at emergency speed. What came back forced silence across the command channel. "The Vorakai doctrine is not conquest," the adjudicator finally transmitted. "It is eradication. When they identify a species as an existential variable, they do not negotiate. They eliminate every trace." Data streams followed, ruined systems, sterilized worlds, extinction markers matching the Vorakai advance patterns now unfolding in real time. The anomalies fit the profile precisely. Not a threat, a target. Kor issued new orders without hesitation. "All forces, priority defense forward." "We block their firing lanes completely." Federation commanders protested. Resource loss, unacceptable risk. But the humans moved anyway, repositioning ships into direct interception paths. Vorakai weapons tore through shields, punishing the decision instantly. Yet their momentum slowed as human unpredictability disrupted targeting solutions. Federation ships followed, reluctantly at first, then decisively as the pattern became undeniable. The Vorakai were not reacting to resistance. They were executing a final purge. For the first time, the Federation understood why humanity's methods were feared. Humans were not defending territory, influence, or status. They were placing themselves between extinction and inevitability, absorbing the violence meant for another species, not because it was efficient, but because it was necessary. The Vorakai tightened their formations, abandoning broad pressure for focused kill corridors aimed past the human lines. Their intent was no longer subtle. Kor saw it immediately. "They're committing," he said. "They think we're the obstacle, not the objective." Human ships surged forward to meet the shift, breaking standard formations and collapsing into fast-moving clusters designed to intercept Vorakai fire lanes. Federation vessels followed with hesitation, then precision, reinforcing human screens with sustained fire. The Vorakai responded with overwhelming force, attempting to punch through rather than outmaneuver. Losses mounted on both sides, but the human response remained fluid. Ships rotating roles mid-engagement, weapons cycling unpredictably, pilots making judgment calls without waiting for command authorization. Federation command transmitted tightly controlled updates, adjusting to the human tempo rather than dictating it. The anomalies continued to pull farther ahead, slipping beyond the immediate engagement zone as Vorakai attention narrowed. Kor redirected strike elements aggressively, forcing the Vorakai to choose between pursuit and survival. They chose pursuit. That choice cost them ground. For the first time, the Vorakai advance stalled, not from superior firepower, but from constant disruption. The Federation watched in stunned silence as humans refused to trade annihilation for efficiency. Every maneuver was deliberate, emotional, and violent when required, yet restrained where it mattered. The Vorakai were being delayed, not defeated, but delay was enough. Humanity wasn't trying to win the battle. They were buying something far more dangerous: time. Kor watched the Vorakai press relentlessly, but subtle cracks began to show. Their synchronized volleys faltered slightly as human strike teams twisted unpredictably, drawing fire along false vectors while Federation units filled gaps with heavy suppression. Kor exploited every opening, directing rapid response squads to intercept concentrated attacks, fragmenting Vorakai formations. Energy trails marked overextended ships, and human crews took advantage, forcing the pursuers to recalibrate mid-assault. Every maneuver demonstrated precise timing and controlled improvisation, converting pressure into leverage. Federation officers, initially hesitant, began matching human unpredictability with disciplined fire, creating overlapping kill zones that slowed Vorakai advances. Kor's fleet, twisting and weaving around the enemy, carved a protective corridor through which the anomalies could accelerate, their movements precise yet instinctive. For the first time, the Vorakai overreached, exposing gaps in formation long hidden under coordinated pressure. Kor seized the moment, ordering concentrated volleys and tactical diversions that forced the Vorakai to pull back momentarily. The anomalies surged forward, gaining distance, though still under threat. The fleet held its ground, combining human improvisation with Federation discipline to turn a defensive fight into controlled counterpressure. Core allowed a rare thought. Unpredictability, once feared by the Federation, was now the tool shaping the battlefield. The Vorakai had met a force capable of reading, reacting, and redirecting their assault, an advantage that could decide the engagement without sacrificing the fleeing anomalies. The Vorakai hesitated, overextended along the flanks, their coordinated volleys losing precision as human and Federation forces pressed their advantage. Core identified the openings instantly. Energy trails and formation gaps revealed predictable recovery paths. He ordered rapid human strike teams to exploit them, weaving unpredictably through the Vorakai's lines, forcing defensive adjustments. Federation vessels, now confident in the human-led tempo, synchronized overlapping fire to amplify pressure without compromising the protective screen around the anomalies. The Vorakai fired relentlessly, but miscalculations mounted. Every evasive twist by humans forced them to overcompensate, creating exploitable windows. Core deployed feints, drawing Vorakai attention while small squads cut along vulnerable vectors, fragmenting their formations. From the orbital center, the Adjudicator observed, impressed despite reservations. The humans were turning chaos into control, using improvisation to reshape an overwhelming assault into opportunity. The anomalies surged forward, threading safely through the corridor human and Federation ships had carved. For the first time, Core allowed the fleet to press beyond pure defense. Strikes and diversions became coordinated, planned, yet dynamically adaptable. The Vorakai, once seemingly unstoppable, were being forced to react, their efficiency undermined by the very unpredictability that had defined humanity. Victory was not yet certain, but the momentum had shifted. The fleeing anomalies gained space, and the alliance between humans and Federation forces was proving its lethal worth. The Vorakai pressed harder, their massive ships cutting through space with brutal coordination, but subtle cracks began to show in their assault. Core spotted exploitable gaps in their formations, overextended flanks, predictable recovery paths, and concentrated fire zones that left blind spots. Without hesitation, he deployed rapid response human strike teams to weave through these openings, drawing attention and forcing defensive adjustments. Federation vessels, now synchronized with human improvisation, layered overlapping fire across the Vorakai lines, fragmenting the enemy's cohesion. Energy volleys lit the void, Vorakai ships twisting to compensate for the unexpected maneuvers. Feints and diversions became lethal, each human-led tactic forcing the Vorakai to react instead of dictate the battle. The anomalies were already far beyond engagement range, a distant factor in strategy rather than an active concern. Core pressed the advantage, orchestrating maneuvers that combined foresight with improvisation, exploiting every lapse in the Vorakai's efficiency. The Federation, initially hesitant, began adopting human pacing and unpredictability, amplifying pressure without sacrificing coordination. Vorakai units, once seeming unstoppable, now contorted under dynamic assault patterns, their precision undermined. Momentum shifted. The humans and Federation were no longer reacting defensively. They were dictating the tempo, turning Vorakai aggression into an opportunity to weaken their formation, testing and exploiting their vulnerabilities. The Vorakai regrouped, their overextended flanks snapping back into tighter formations, weapons arrays shifting to synchronized volleys designed to crush the human Federation push. Core anticipated the maneuver, issuing split commands to strike teams and capital ships alike, using feints to bait the Vorakai into overcompensating. Human ships twisted through the Vorakai lines unpredictably, drawing concentrated fire while smaller Federation vessels targeted the openings with precision volleys. For the first time, the Vorakai's efficiency wavered under coordinated, adaptive assault. Core's rapid response teams exploited weak points in energy distribution, creating temporary corridors that fractured enemy formations without exposing friendly units. The Adjudicator monitored, noting how human improvisation forced a dynamic tempo on the battlefield, bending Vorakai strategy to defensive reaction. Yet the Vorakai were far from broken. They adapted quickly, shifting targeting matrices and forcing humans to constantly recalibrate. Every strike and counterstrike became a test of predictive judgment, coordination, and instinct. Core's fleet responded, alternating aggressive pushes with evasive maneuvers, forcing the Vorakai into overextension and misaligned volleys. Each breach chipped away at the enemy's cohesion, gradually turning pressure into leverage. The battle surged across the sector like living machinery, kinetic energy flashing between disciplined human Federation formations and relentless Vorakai precision. Though the anomalies were distant, their escape had bought the humans this opportunity. Now the fight was pure, deadly, and tactical. A crucible testing strategy, improvisation, and the alliance itself. The Vorakai, despite relentless discipline, began showing strain. Human strike teams coordinated rapid interdiction maneuvers, slipping between energy volleys and creating cascading gaps. Core's orders were precise yet fluid. Destabilize their formations, force the enemy to react, exploit hesitation, and avoid unnecessary destruction. Federation units adapted quickly, channeling their fire through the human-led rhythm, amplifying pressure while leaving openings for the Vorakai to retreat if needed. Slowly, the once cohesive enemy lines fractured, chains of ships isolated by dynamic pincer movements. Core watched patterns emerge, overcompensated turns, misaligned targeting arrays, and repeated errors under sustained improvisational pressure. The fleet moved as one organism, humans dictating tempo, Federation supplying disciplined firepower, Vorakai scrambling to maintain coherence. Explosions rocked the void where energy shields collapsed, but the maneuvers were surgical. No ship was destroyed unless unavoidable. The Vorakai began to pull back, their cohesion irreparably weakened, confusion mounting as human unpredictability and coordinated counterattacks forced them from initiative into reaction. Core allowed a brief moment of grim satisfaction. The humans and Federation had turned an overwhelming assault into control without committing to wholesale extermination. The Vorakai were still dangerous, but now their movements could be predicted, intercepted, and neutralized, a decisive advantage won through strategy, improvisation, and collaboration. The Vorakai fleet, fractured and disoriented, struggled to regroup under relentless, unpredictable pressure. Core seized the initiative, ordering precision interdiction strikes that targeted engines, communications, and weapons arrays rather than ship hulls, gradually reducing their ability to coordinate. Human strike teams threaded through openings, drawing fire while Federation vessels delivered calculated volleys that disabled systems instead of destroying ships outright. Each move was a blend of improvisation and disciplined strategy, turning Vorakai aggression against them. Core's tactics forced repeated misalignments, overcompensations, and isolated groups of Vorakai vessels that could no longer sustain offensive cohesion. The enemy's formations collapsed from within, energy volleys became erratic, defensive shields faltered, and command coordination frayed. Core allowed calculated retreats through gaps, prioritizing containment over annihilation, leaving crippled but intact ships to withdraw. Federation commanders, initially skeptical, now mirrored human improvisation, reinforcing disrupted Vorakai clusters and securing control of contested sectors. The outcome was undeniable. The Vorakai were no longer a coordinated threat. Momentum rested with the humans and Federation, who had turned a near-impossible engagement into a tactical victory. While the anomalies remained beyond reach, the fleet's incapacitation guaranteed their continued safety. Core's calculated balance of aggression and restraint showcased a strategy the Vorakai could not anticipate, leaving the enemy scattered, operationally crippled, and forced to acknowledge the human-led alliance as a force capable of bending their precision to human design. The Vorakai fleet, crippled and scattered, drifted across the sector like wounded predators. Core's fleet held formation, vigilant against any resurgence, but the immediate threat had passed. Federation vessels moved in, taking formal custody of the remaining Vorakai ships. Energy dampeners and containment fields immobilized engines, while boarding parties secured command centers, following protocols refined over centuries for hostile species. Core watched, satisfied yet wary, as the Federation assumed control, their officers cataloging damage, securing prisoners, and documenting breaches. Human crews remained on alert, maintaining perimeter security, their improvisation now tempered by the steady rhythm of Federation procedure. The anomalies were long gone, safe and unreachable, their survival no longer an immediate concern. Debris from energy volleys and collapsed formations drifted silently, a stark reminder of what had been a near-catastrophic encounter. Kor allowed the adjudicator a nod of acknowledgement. "You handle them," he said. "We've done our part." The Federation, relieved to reclaim authority, began transferring the Vorakai vessels to orbital containment zones, ensuring that diplomacy, interrogation, or relocation could proceed without human interference. The battle had ended, but the consequences were not yet resolved. Humans had demonstrated decisive power, flexibility, and tactical genius. The Federation had regained control over procedure and justice. Together, the joint forces had survived the Vorakai assault, turning a potentially devastating encounter into a strategic victory that would echo across the sector, setting a precedent for how humans and Federation forces could confront overwhelming aggression through collaboration, improvisation, and restraint. Orbital stations hummed with activity as Federation crews secured the remaining Vorakai vessels. Boarding teams moved systematically, isolating command nodes, dampening energy cores, and cataloging technology. Kor maintained a watchful presence from the lead capital ship, coordinating patrols and ensuring no Vorakai units could slip through the perimeter. Human strike teams, though battle-worn, performed maintenance sweeps and assisted with navigation calibration for the orbital containment zones. Debriefing channels buzzed as Federation officers compiled operational reports, each highlighting moments where human initiative had preserved efficiency and minimized collateral damage. Protocols were revised on the fly to accommodate lessons learned, blending rigid Federation procedure with human improvisation. The adjudicator oversaw every step, occasionally conferring with Kor to clarify maneuvers and outcomes, a quiet acknowledgement of trust earned during combat. In private corridors, council discussions began to consider long-term implications. The humans had acted decisively, ethically, and strategically, altering assumptions about how engagements could be conducted. No speeches were made, no fanfare punctuated the work. Instead, the sector itself bore witness. The Vorakai were contained, the corridors secure, and the humans had not only survived but integrated seamlessly into Federation operations. For the first time, decisions once clouded by doubt now relied on collaboration, observation, and calculated trust. Kor watched the slow rotation of Vorakai vessels in containment, a reminder that victory was measured not only by survival but by the control, discipline, and foresight exercised after the battle had ended. The trial chamber was quiet, the hum of orbital systems the only background to the weight of final reports. The Federation formally recorded the outcome. Humanity had failed the trial. Protocols demanded it. Criteria had not been met. Yet no one present could deny the scale of what had occurred. Kor and his officers stood apart, observing as adjudicators and liaisons pored over data, tactical logs, and after-action assessments. Humans had faced a force the Federation considered unstoppable, acted decisively to defend critical infrastructure, and achieved victory without needless destruction. Their blend of controlled violence, improvisation, and moral judgment forced the Federation to reconsider long-held assumptions. Fear lingered. Humans remained unpredictable, potentially dangerous, but respect had been earned. Conversations in council chambers shifted from judgment to analysis. How had the humans done it? What lessons could be codified? Or had the Federation underestimated them? The anomaly of human action was undeniable, a species capable of extreme force, yet capable of restraint and empathy. Though they had failed formal admittance, a consensus began to emerge. Humanity could not simply be excluded. The Federation extended an invitation, carefully worded, to participate in shaping protocols, strategies, and ideas for future civilization, not as full members, but as collaborators. Kor allowed a rare, quiet satisfaction. The humans had reminded the galaxy of what they had become once, after forgetting how, and now the Federation would be forced to reckon with it. The trial had ended, the judgment formal, yet the true impact of humanity was only beginning to be understood. Commander Elias Core stood on the observation deck, gazing at the quiet expanse of the sector. The Vorikai fleet, contained and neutralized, drifted under Federation custody, a silent testament to what had been survived and accomplished. The orbital stations bore the scars of battle, yet they remained intact, functioning, and secure, a monument to the humans' decisive intervention. Across the Council corridors, Federation officers and adjudicators debated the implications, recording lessons that would ripple through protocols and doctrine for years to come. Core's mind wandered to the paradox of human action, capable of violence yet guided by empathy, unpredictable yet precise, brutal yet restrained. It was this balance, long misunderstood, that had preserved countless lives and reshaped the Federation's understanding of what a species could be. Humanity had not been accepted, and the trial had officially failed, but the galaxy had been reminded of their capacity, their ingenuity, and their moral complexity. In quiet moments, Core reflected on the words that had come to define the engagement. This is what we became after forgetting how. No official decree could capture the full meaning of their achievement, yet its impact was undeniable. Humanity had not joined the Federation, but they had earned a place at the table of influence, a chance to help redefine civilization itself. Core allowed himself a rare, grim smile, knowing that the true measure of victory lay not in titles or approval, but in action, judgment, and consequence. And for those listening now, witnessing the story of humans standing against overwhelming odds, if you like this story, please comment and like and subscribe to the channel for more.